Brought to you by runtogold.com, the premier source for monetary science applied to geopolitical, international, and economic, financial news and events. Well, welcome back to the 25th episode of the runtogold.com podcast. In this one, I'll play a quick clip from The Onion.
Fort Knox receives $85 from Cash for Gold. It's the Onion Radio News. This is Doyle Redland reporting. White House officials publicly condemned Cash for Gold today in response to a check for only $85 received in exchange for the entire contents of Fort Knox. Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner told reporters he and the American people had expected considerably more from the company.
To my way of thinking, $85 is an insult. I believe we could have pawned the Liberty Bell for more than that.
Government officials fear they may have made a bigger mistake by working with the company's sister corporation, Cash for Plutonium. Doyle Redland for The Onion Radio News. The Onion.
So, while it is funny satire, it actually hits on a couple very poignant issues. First, a lot of commentators are saying that the gold mania is beginning to grip Wall Street, especially with these Cash for Gold commercials on MSNBC or the other news shows. Well, what's really funny about that is that the commercials are inviting the American public to sell gold, not to buy gold. And so I don't think that that's really part of the mania when you're trying to get people to sell their gold. The other part that's, and I actually mentioned that at the Cambridge House Investment Conference in Phoenix, because we had, about 1,000 people there. It's a small conference because it's only the second one that's been done in Phoenix, and pretty much no advertising was done except through the newsletter writers like myself. But I told everyone, man, we've just had a year where people have lost a ton in their retirements, and the only real asset that's retained any of its purchasing power is gold, and nobody's here. That's perhaps one of the most bullish aspects of the market right now. So just the fact that not very many people have moved into the physical gold bullion to hold part of their cash balances, that's quite an amazing thing. I also mentioned in one of the articles that I'd bought 3 of those Austrian Philharmonics, so that was $60. Well, if every American bought 3 ounces of silver, that'd be about 1 billion ounces, which would be about 10% of the above-ground stockpile, give or take a little bit. And so, just moving some of one's cash balances into the physical metals, imagine if that were done on a large scale, which is where I think that this is going, because as these fiat currency illusions evaporate, then gold and silver, especially through mediums like gold money, will retain their position as the most powerful currencies in the world, especially for use in ordinary daily transactions. And we're talking about just moving $60 of cash balances would take out about 1 billion ounces of silver. And so imagine if people, I wonder what an average cash balance is for an American, but I bet it's a lot more than $60. Probably a couple $1,000. And so that's a lot of gold and silver to buy, physical bullion. And The Onion raises another funny point is, at least the Treasury got $85 for the entire contents of Fort Knox. Even though they say they have 8,000 tons in there, no one really knows because it hasn't been audited. And Alan Greenspan, he testified before Congress that central banks stand ready to lease gold should the price rise. And so who knows how much gold is actually in Fort Knox? Who knows how much has been mobilized in the gold price suppression scheme to keep the dollar strong and gold weak, to disable that international barometer? Who knows what the U.S. government still has? And that's the great thing about gold, is that you actually have to deliver the physical metal to get value for it, unless you can find someone stupid enough to take a paper instrument like GLD or a futures contract or whatever. And so when you're dealing with these shady companies like Cash for Gold, well, you actually have to deliver the physical metal, and maybe they just weren't able to deliver the physical metal out of Fort Knox because it isn't there. And so they only got $85, which is a little bit less than the Liberty Bell. And, you know, the United States, even though cash for plutonium would probably yield more money because we do seem to enforce the dollar with force and violence throughout the world, that is coming to an end. I think that the rest of the world's getting quite annoyed with that, and so the geopolitical situation is changing, and we should see quite a bit of change in that regard. So anyways, just make sure you've got the physical metal, and even though we have a lot of shady characters in the gold industry, like the Cash for Gold, or a lot of different coin dealers are kind of shady. For example, Monex has an F from the Better Business Bureau, whereas APMEX has got an A+. So, if you buy physical bullion, I like APMEX. Or you can always do like what I did at the conference. You can just cash on the barrelhead. You exchange the cash for the physical metal right there. Then you don't really have any of these problems dealing with shady characters. So anyways, make sure you got some physical golden bullion, and it is interesting to see gold move over $1,000 an ounce, and for some reason silver is just sitting there at 13. So last year, when gold was over $1,000 an ounce, it was about $20 an ounce for silver, if not a little bit more. So there appears to be a little bit of upside with silver. Anyways, that will end the 25th episode of the RunToGold.com podcast. And make sure that you've got the real physical bullion and not some paper substitute like an ETF or a promise from the U.S. government, because they don't seem to have the physical metal, or at least they're running out of it. You've been listening to the RunToGold.com podcast, the premier source for applied monetary science on the web.